Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Profiles in Risk. This is my second take. I hit record this time, so I'm a happy camper. I am so pleased on this cold, wintry Saturday in New England to introduce Louis Ziskin. Louis is the founder and president of Dropin. Dropin is an on-demand live video inspection service for insurance adjusters that improves claims handling processes, increases work efficiency, and speeds up the underwriting process as well. Louis, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Nicholas.
Yep. So on the first take, before I forgot to hit record. We know that you're based out of California, so it's nice and warm. You have your t-shirt on. I'm envious. We'll get that out of the way. And I always start all of these podcasts by allowing the guest a little bit of an elevator pitch. So in your own words, what is Dropin?
Well, you did a great job of it. I'd just like to add one part that we improve customer service at the same time. In fact, Dropin's motto, or why, if you're a Simon Sinek student, is the opportunity to improve customer service and the bottom line is so rare. Those are the verticals that we've chosen to go after. And when we pivoted into insurance, which was not the original idea, we realized that fit that criteria, that there's an opportunity here to help people as well as the carrier.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is, for example, when you call your insurance company and you say, hey, I have a claim, they turn you into a number and hang up the phone on you. And they talk about high customer engagement, and they talk about we're there when you need us, and they advertise, hey, we snap our fingers and a grizzly bear turns into a hot tub. But in reality, what happens with these claims, and they call it first notice of loss. It's interesting. As I got into the business, I realized first notice of loss for an insured is completely different than first notice of loss for a carrier. First notice of loss for the insured is, hey, I have water damage in my home. Well, like I said, the call center, and this is some of the biggest companies, that the call center turns them into a number and hangs up the phone on them. When the adjuster calls back in a few hours or the next day or sometimes a week later, that's what carriers call first notice of loss from their internal process. And we just thought, wow, that's not really doing the job. And then as I got more and more into it, I saw that the carriers were buying a lot of AI. I saw, Lemonade's doing fantastic work out there. I mean, I saw this stuff. And then we started learning about processes, and we started learning about internal conflicts in these big carriers. And then as things progressed, I realized, the claims department doesn't care if the company makes money or not. They just want to process their claims on budget. Yeah. That's what their bonus structure is based on. Company can lose millions of dollars or $1 billion this year and they can still get their bonus. And the company can make $10 billion this year and they won't get a bonus at all. So struggling with that has been interesting. But, when I talk to C-suite level people, and that's where we've really gotten our traction, I say, hey, you don't want to release this AI on your existing customers because you can't do that. When you profile for a group, like if you use your AI to profile for bad actors, you're going to have collateral damage. Some good actors are going to get caught up in that mess. And with retention being so important in this day and age, because millennials just aren't buying insurance, the big carriers, the tier one carriers, they don't want to do that. So they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on stuff that they can't use. So I approach them, and what I say to them is, hey, your good actor at that first notice of loss is calling for help. Why not try to help them instead of hang up the phone on them?
Yeah.
And they say, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, why don't you ask them if you can send them a text right there from the call center and see what's happening, right? You see it. If you have someone who's older who doesn't want to receive a text, you can send a Lyft driver over there who will do the video streaming for you. Now, for insurance purposes, anybody who calls and doesn't want their claim to at least be attempted to be processed
Of
faster and
course.
maybe solved today, if it's a leaky faucet,
Of
or,
course.
most claims are under 3,000, they're water damage. When Mrs. Jones is calling the insurance company at 3 in the afternoon because her sink is leaking, she's begging for help.
Yeah.
So you said, now if somebody chooses not to opt into one of those two things, they've identified themselves as a bad actor. Now run your AI on them with a better base set of data that they've opted out of having someone look at their claim today,
Yeah.
and potentially get somebody over there to fix
Yes.
that's a
Yeah.
bad actor.
Yes.
Whether they're
No.
good people or not, that's a bad actor for insurance purposes.
You are the first person that has used the words AI and collateral damage, and I would say most folks. I would even venture most folks that tout AI or machine learning, whether it's on LinkedIn or uh, Twitter or wherever, probably doesn't understand AI. And
Yes.
there is collateral damage. It's a model. It's a sophisticated model that, as we all know, all models are bad. Some are useful. I love that collateral damage.
Yeah.
You're going to get false positives.
It's the same thing in
Mm.
anything, you see, anytime we profile for any kind of group, there's collateral damage.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about AI, it only gets better based on the collateral damage being just like your inbox says, is this not junk? Okay, put it back
Yes.
in the inbox and I know it's not junk
Yeah.
anymore. Well,
Yeah.
for Lemonade, their 250,000 customers were attracted to what they were doing and knew that that's what's going to happen. And that's great. And that's what tech companies do. We build something from nothing, we build the process along the way. And our first customers are typically people who are attracted to whatever app or idea or whatever it is. So we don't have existing customers to worry about because we're building something for customers that are going to come. Insurance companies, the big boys, they're completely different. They have hundreds of millions of policies, billions of policies all over the world. They have customers that are happy with that. They can't just dump an AI on them.
No,
They
so
just
true.
can't do it.
So true. So we're going to dig deeper into Dropin.
Great.
But already, I would like to rewind the tape and go back to before you got into insurance. So I'm going to throw this is going to be a two-parter. First question is, why did you start Dropin altogether? Second is, what did you see specifically in insurance that you said, this tech might be very useful over on that side for those problems?
Okay, well, what happened is I was reading the proposed FAA regulations for commercial drone pilots in 2015, as only a federal convict would. We read everything. I don't know if you know, but I spent 12 years in federal prison for
I
drug
did not know
trafficking.
that.
Yes, came home in 2012, and it's kind of funny because the people I talk to now in the insurance industry, they're like, we knew about you from day one, a drug trafficker with a tech company who's going to get into insurance. We thought it was like a joke, and here you are 3.5 years later with technology that nobody has, and you're able to do things that nobody else in the space can do, and you have a fantastic product, and we love using it.
This is truly a first for the show. So
Yeah.
keep going. I love the story.
Yeah, I was originally I had two indictments. It's the largest XT trafficking case in United States history. I'm really careful about, I do full disclosure on it because having lost 12 years of my life, I respect people's time, and like we've lost some contracts because of it. We got a couple contracts because of it. And then also I spent a lot of time talking to kids. So I disclose it in order to get their ear, in a way to make sure that it's not glamorizing it. I mean, I want to be clear. What I did was a mistake. It was not a shortcut. There was nothing good that came out of it in my life. In fact, it was, for someone who thinks they're intelligent, for me, the hardest thing to realize was that the biggest decision of my life was a mistake. And to be able to admit that, after I'd been in a few years, and I wasn't blaming informants anymore, and I was taking responsibility for my life and my situation, which I thought I did before that. And then, you have layers and evolutions of this stuff. And, you're sitting in prison, you get evolutions a lot faster. And I realize that, I'm fully responsible for everything. And that's kind of what I talk to kids about.
Yeah.
I tell them at the end of the day, there's two kinds of people. There's the kinds of people that look for an excuse, kind of a safety net for failure so they can blame somebody else. And then there's other kind of people that even when other people who are supposed to do things mess up, they're putting 110% in so they cover up for them and succeed anyway. Which kind of person do you want to be?
Yeah.
And I give them examples of like, hey, you guys have all the skills that I have. And oh no, you can't, this and that, and I go, no, wait, there's a kid on the schoolyard outside this class that all of you know. Maybe you don't like him, maybe you do, or her, but when you need something from them, you know how to act differently and get what you want. And they start snickering, and I go, okay, that right there is manipulation. It's the same thing as when I pay someone a paycheck and they come to work for me. It's just a win-win situation. The word has a negative connotation, but you have all the skills. You just need to fill your brains with more knowledge to figure out how to manipulate in a win-win situation where it's not a negative. And that really resonates. Obviously, before we get to that, they realize I get a lot of street credibility with the kids because of my past,
Sure.
and a lot of
I
a
can
lot
believe
of the
that.
teachers say, I go in there in a suit and tie and I act like a normal guy and I tell them about opportunities and I teach them about Moore's law and I tell them don't be scared that Google and Facebook are going to steal your ideas, because actually if they did that as much as everybody said, they wouldn't have the free R&D that they have. It makes more sense for them to buy people once they have something that they like. And I teach them about Moore's law and I say, don't worry about that either, because every day processing power gets better and better. So things are possible today that simply weren't possible yesterday for anybody on the planet. So don't take those hopes. I'm not telling you to go work at McDonald's. I'm not telling you to go give up those hopes and dreams for all the nice things and buying your mom a house and having a nice car. I'm just telling you to get them in a way that you can actually enjoy them, because the way I got all the things that I did in the beginning of my life, I got them in a way that stopped me from enjoying them. I was either worried about what was next. I was never enjoying the things that I got. And so that's kind of what I leave them with. Do not acquire things in a manner that precludes you from enjoying them.
Yeah. Because early on, it was not win-win.
Yes.
It was
It
win-lose.
wasn't. Yes. But you know what? There's so many things to be learned, right? There's so many skills to be learned and extracted from our youth, whether we're on the wrong side of the tracks or not, whether we're on the wrong side of the law or not. There's lessons there that are human, that apply. For example, I didn't grow up being a criminal. I didn't grow up to be a drug trafficker. I didn't have this, I saw what I thought was a shortcut to money, but I learned so many things about business by doing that I apply in the world today. My investors will tell you there's no cleaner set of books, and they make jokes about it. Well, he's an ex-drug trafficker. Of course he takes care of the money. You know what I mean? But it's funny because I give them bank access. I don't do quarterly reports, and I tell them all, I'm like, hey, if you have a question about any of this stuff, it's all hooked up to QuickBooks. You can see the bank and the one credit card. And I know if you're looking at it, you're up at 3 a.m. Don't worry, call me because I have your money. Call me if you have a question.
Yeah.
And, those kinds of things have gotten me $5.5 million of friends and family money.
Yeah.
We haven't ever had an official raise. There's no VC telling me what to do. There's no private equity firm telling me what to do. And because of that, we now have a solution for catastrophes that are based on satellite connectivity, where we're no longer connectivity dependent.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So far, so good. You're reading FAA regulations.
Yeah.
Just
You
curious.
have to edit this. We're bouncing all over the place.
No, that's fine. No, this is a good story. So, before you continue on the story with the FAA regulations, were you reading them for criminal purposes or for business purposes?
No, when you're in prison for 12 years, you try to find dense material. Like I read Stephen Hawking's commentary on all Einstein stuff. I read a lot of Brian Dawkins, Richard Green, physics, chemistry, stuff like that. Because after the first couple of years, while I love John Grisham, you just get bored of the novels. At least I did. So I searched out dense stuff, and ever since I came home, when I see stuff that everybody else leaves, on a coffee table or in a waiting room, I pick that stuff up, and that's exactly what happened. I was building houses for my brother, who's in real estate. He's an accountant as well, and I was kind of his eyes on the scene when I first came home in 2012, and I was learning the business about construction and development and all this stuff. And there was like somebody was using it, for almost like trash or to walk on. There was this pamphlet, and I don't know how it got there, but it had the proposed FAA regulations for commercial drone pilots. And the question you asked is very interesting, because while I wasn't reading it for any other reason than it was dense material and it caught my attention. As I was reading it, they were saying the commercial drone pilot had to have the drone line of sight and couldn't go over 400 feet. Well, my mind immediately went, well, how would I get around that? So I guess that's a little bit of the criminal, right? Like that's that mentality. But I also the reason why it's funny is I use this example for kids. And I said, then I found a way how to use it for good. I didn't use it for bad. And I said, okay, so you only have to control the guy who's controlling the drone. You don't need to control the drone. And I said, now, and I tell kids, see, here's the moment of truth. Do you use that to engage in criminal behavior? Because there's obvious, hey, if I can remote control a drone from anywhere in the world, maybe. Or do you find a way to use it that will benefit the public good, that's not criminal, and allow you to enjoy it? And so my first idea was, before I had any idea of what runway or stack or any of that was okay, I called a friend of mine who was a senior engineer at Samsung, and I said, hey, can you live stream from a drone? And he said, yeah, YouTube Live is doing it now with DJI drones. And I said, great. I went to Amazon. I ordered the drone. I put it up in the air. When it came the next day, I did all the links. And I learned my first tech term, latency. And so what I didn't realize is all these broadcast services, even when you're watching Facebook Live, what you're seeing happened a minute ago on a good day.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Periscope, same thing, because they don't have a need for you to be able to communicate live. You can chat, you can send a tip, you can this or that, but there's no need for that. But if you're going to tell a pilot to fly right, you need to see what he's seeing now, not what he saw a minute ago. If you're going to tell him for insurance purposes, hey, I need to see the serial numbers on that chiller on the roof, you have to be able to see what he's seeing.
Yeah.
And then, you want to take images, full resolution images. Well, if you see what he or she, the pilot, saw a minute ago, and you snap the shutter, you're not going to get the picture that you saw on your screen from the drone. You're going to get what the drone's seeing now. So I called him back, and he gave me a long list. I remember the first three things, and the whole rest of the list I don't remember. But it was in-app live streaming from a drone with low latency and VoIP, and then a bunch of gibberish that I probably still wouldn't understand. I wish I'd saved that paper though. And I went and I found a dev shop, and they gave me a guy, and he told me, okay, 30 grand, I'll get you a demo. It'll take me 2 months. And I said, okay, great. Well, I knew I didn't know anything about tech. So I found another developer through another referral. I asked him for the same thing. I didn't tell them about each other. And when one had a problem, I would tell the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And when the other one had a problem, I'd tell the other one. So they thought I was the smartest guy in the world. And I ended up getting the demo done in half the time for twice the price. So depending which side of the table you're sitting on, I'm either a genius or a jackass. And that's how we started. And, my idea was to become the biggest media company in the world. I thought, hey, between camera phones and drones, everything is curated for us to watch. We might be able to get on Netflix and pick from what's available and say we want to watch that. But no, there isn't anything available for us to say, I want to see Damascus, Syria right now. I don't want to see NBC's feed. I don't want to see Fox News's feed. I want to talk to someone who lives in Syria right now and hear what they have to say about what's going on. And so I thought, okay, as soon as the app's on everybody's phone, great, fantastic. You'll be able to, for a few bucks, you know, somebody's a few blocks away, you need to, street view's not good enough, you know, and I thought all kinds of use cases people would use. And I was going to put drones in the trunk of every Lyft car that I could find. And that was that. Well, that didn't work out, because then I realized after I had this big plan, I sat down with Jen Friel, who you know, and she told me, okay, I think the marketing for this to create sufficient market awareness is going to be about $20 million. And I said, okay, we're not doing that. We needed a pivot, and we needed someone who would use it a lot. And insurance was something we thought about, because from our own experience with insurance, how much easier would it be if you called your insurance company and you showed them the damage right now and just let them take over?
Yeah.
I mean, why? I pay my premiums. Why should I? To me, that's the least amount of work. I'd be happy to do that, to turn what should be a 3-day claim, you know, and to have it, stop it from taking a month. To me, that's less work, right? And everybody I talked to felt the same. So we pivoted into insurance, which was a mistake. My background was, you know, prohibitive.
Wait, you said it was a mistake?
Yes, it was a mistake. Now we're very happy that we're here.
So
But at that
explain
time,
that.
well, from running a business, when you have a startup and you have technology, I mean, you want to get to revenue quickly. First, the insurance industry on its own, as you know, has the longest sales cycle in the world.
Yes.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
So that's a hard thing for anybody, any startup to have to deal with. I mean, just the staying power that's required. And all things being equal, that's difficult. But then you have a guy who has a background like me, you know, and I was talking to a couple of guys at Lloyd's a couple of weeks ago when I was in London, and they told me, they're like, oh yeah, we knew all about you. You were an entertaining story. We were like, oh, somebody's money laundering drug money in the insurtech world. Like, that's what people thought, you know. And so that was the first barrier to entry. Then they saw I got off parole, and they saw that, you know, the first drug czar of the United States is very supportive of me. And my federal sentencing judge, wrote a letter saying he wished more people turned their life around. And then we were around for 2 years. And hey, we got our first customer who said, you know what? You're fully honest with me about it. You're more honest with me than any other tech company, besides disclosing your background, which I knew about anyway, but I appreciate you disclosing it to me. You didn't tell us anything that you don't do already. You're not a pitch deck company. This is what you do, and it's all ready to go. And actually, it works better than any of your competitors. And you have stuff that they don't have, such as the drones and the live peer-to-peer low latency stuff. And we're going to run with you. And then, you know, a year later, Lyft gave us a call and said, hey, yeah, we want to, you know, let's see what you're doing. We want to get into this space. Let's talk about it. I went up there, and I didn't know it at the time, but people had been in there before, and half of their pitch was basically speaking bad about me. And so Lyft had, not that they wouldn't have gotten around to finding us had they continued, but it was almost like a joke. They were like, are these people so worried? They looked up the company and they said, oh, that's kind of cool. But then they really thought, okay, we're Lyft. We'll email him. Let's talk to this guy. He must be an interesting guy, right? And then we got up there and they said, you know, the craziest thing happened. You said great things about all your competitors who'd just been in here saying horrible things about you. And all you wanted to do was a competitive matrix about their product versus yours, and what their strengths were versus yours. And you were just ready to get to work. So we decided to do a pilot. And your team just outperformed anything we've ever seen. And so we're continuing down that path now. You know, we did disaster hurricane inspections right after in the Carolinas. And we were there on scene with connectivity, you know, after 2 days. Actually, we were ready to go after 12 hours, but Lyft wasn't ready to go for a couple days. And we were calling carriers who we dealt with or had relations with, and they were shocked that we were ready to go. We didn't need deployment time. We didn't need a rally point. We didn't need anything. We have satellite connectivity for our drones. I mean, they couldn't believe it, and we were able to do a little bit of work for them. And I learned something else at that moment. And believe it or not, and I know this is going to sound stupid, but I learned that carriers are not processing claims in catastrophe events. They've already pre-booked TPAs to do all of that stuff, a month before. The minute they know the hurricane is going to hit the coast, they book people from all over the world.
Sure.
25,000 claims, 10,000 claims.
Yeah.
They're there with their trucks to be supportive, of their customers, give them coffee, try to steal other carriers' customers, and use their fax and have a warm place to sit and talk. But they're not processing claims. The TPAs and the MGAs are doing it.
They can't. They don't have the resources to do that, because you can't hire that much staff and keep them going year round. Catastrophe is a very unnatural process for an insurance company. So I'd like to dig in a little bit more on that part of it.
Yeah.
So that's how you use Lyft. How does that work?
We use crowdsourced people. It's ironic, right? Like, so what I tell, when I first came out and we had the dispatchable workforce and the direct streaming where you could send a text to the insured, carriers were saying, oh, customers don't opt into that. They only opt in 30% of the time. And, a couple of our tier 2, tier 3 customers, they don't care. They process 5,000-6,000 claims a month. They use us on 300-400 of them, and they save money, and they continue their other process for the customers that don't opt in at first notice of loss. Well, I called Lyft about 2.5 years ago when this first came up, and I said, hey, we need to be able to send Lyft drivers to get to the address, and we'll send them the text, and they can be connected to the insurance company and live stream whatever damage for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And they loved it. And then I didn't hear back from them until 8-9 months ago. And they said, oh, great. And they hadn't even realized that I'd called them before, because the biz dev person who was working there at the time hasn't been there for quite some time. They found me, again, it's ironic. Maybe they would have found me anyway, but they found me because my competitors spent half their pitch meeting talking bad about me. So it's a complete system now. If the customer doesn't opt in, that's fine. What time are you going to be home? We can send somebody over. Oh, I'll be home. You'll be home at 3:00. Great. All they do in the Dropin platform is enter the address and the time of arrival. My API dumps it into Lyft's API. Lyft makes sure one of the drivers who are trained in being able to do this, having headphones and knowing, what's about to happen, gets assigned and is there at 3:00. They get the text instead of the customer who didn't want to do it with their cell phone or whatever, or maybe the maid's home, whatever it is. They go and they do the inspection for the carrier. They're connected live to the carrier. If the carrier, and this solves a liability issue of sending out non-licensed people, because it's a licensed adjuster watching the stream. So if they see mold under the sink, they can order remediation right away. But let's say we sent somebody who was unskilled that didn't have that live connection. They take pictures from a checklist, right? And by the time that turnaround gets to the carrier 3 or 4 days later, they have a huge liability because they should have ordered remediation 3 days ago.
Yeah,
The person who's taking the pictures, who's unskilled, has no idea what they're seeing or that other things would be required based on what they're seeing.
What kind of issues pop up during a catastrophe regarding the live streaming? Sometimes it takes weeks for the infrastructure to get built back up. Is it a situation where the folks that are running the drones have their own satellite connection or something where they can actually do that kind of thing?
Yes, for disaster, that's what we did even in Malibu. Just a few days ago, we were actually showing people their homes. Like, hey, we went to the high school. We showed a couple people where we were allowed to fly. A couple of our pilots do have exceptions, but we brought our own satellite, and that's a satellite dish. And that's what we use for our catastrophe response team. I mean, we can grid 10 square miles with a carrier looking live at it and recording 4K high def stuff that high resolution stuff that we can send to them later or after the fact in about, we did it in about 2 hours.
Wow.
And so and because catastrophe is the way it is, and like I said, I learned that carriers buy service in advance. Most of the time, we can deploy when a carrier asks us. Now we've gotten inquiries for up north, in Northern California where the fires are, and the carriers have asked us, and we're like, listen, we're ready to go. We can be anywhere in the world with our catastrophe response team, which includes drone pilots, sometimes Lyft drivers if it's in an area where Lyft services, and we can be ready to go in 24 hours anywhere you want us. So when you have a fire situation, you have a no-fly period. We can be staging during that time. The only difference between us and everybody else is our equipment that's required to do this is very small, and we can deploy it very quickly, and we're not dependent on any outside service other than the stuff that we own and maintain. So we guarantee, our SLA guarantees them connectivity in any catastrophe event where they hire us. And I was even talking to a couple of the larger carriers, and I said, you know, you pull up with your trucks and you have your big beautiful truck and you have your great coffee and you're telling your people, hey, come. Imagine if while they're sitting there next to you at the desk and you want to make them feel better, we can loop you in when we're over their house and they can see their property and they can see that you're right on top of it.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And you know, because we're able to do that. That's the other thing that we do, where we tell them, like what we're developing with Lloyd's right now, it's a process change to use something like this, right? But we found a way to process change with very little residual presence. Because of the call centers that all the big carriers have in the East, we're just doing the process change there. Instead of right when they give you a claim number and take your name, instead of hanging up the phone on you, step 3 is, hey, can I see what the problem is? Maybe we can get someone on the line to help you right now. If the customer opts into that, carriers are then worried, and Lloyd's has been super helpful. They're like, that's fantastic. But what happens if it is something that the call center thinks we can't have the call center making a determination to send a plumber to someone's house? They're not a licensed adjuster. No problem. You use the same 3-way connection. You loop in your licensed adjuster who could be anywhere in the world on his mobile device. He sees exactly what the call center is seeing. And he can tell Miss Jones, hey, Miss Jones, you know what? I'm your adjuster, and I think we can get that fixed today. I'm going to go ahead and send one of our approved vendor plumbers over there. They're going to be there in about 30, 45 minutes. I might call you back with him and do this again so that he can see it and make sure that he brings the right equipment. Well, now nobody's making any decision where the customer is concerned except the licensed adjuster. So that works really well. Obviously, then you can also send a Lyft driver who gets there. And when the call center is monitoring the Lyft driver, they can also loop in the licensed adjuster who can make a determination based on the Lyft driver's stream. Hey, we can send somebody over there right now. We can get this fixed right now. And we've had a couple carriers who've been able to close claims in the same day.
Wow.
Right? I mean, small claims, it's a cracked valve underneath the sink is one of them. They got somebody, but you know what? I don't know. They're not sharing the numbers with me, but I'll bet you that person who made that claim re-ups with that carrier.
Completely. Yeah, I would guess retention. That's a retention tool if I ever saw one. Absolutely.
And the other thing that's amazing about it, you're letting your good actors self-select. There's no collateral damage from AI. Well, also at the same time, what you're doing is you're creating a stop loss against leakage. If you take crisis psychology, and I can't believe this isn't in any of the insurance literature, because every claim involves some kind of crisis, right? When that crisis happens and that good actor's calling you for help and you hang up the phone on him or her, guess what? The husband or wife, brother, sister, cousin comes over. And we know this, what would otherwise be a good actor is given bad actor ideas, and resentment is built because the carrier didn't snap their fingers and get them away from a grizzly bear like they advertised.
Yeah.
They hung up the phone on me. They should pay for new floors, not just new cabinets. In fact, I want a whole new kitchen. This is how leakage happens. This is the psychology of crisis and resentment in human behavior. And the fact that carriers with all their money and all their people and all their brains are blind to this, how a process was ever developed to turn somebody in a number and hang up the phone on them when you're in an environment where retention is critical and customer CSI score is critical. Handle the people who have identified themselves as good actors with a super high touch like you claim to do. They're going to feel like you've treated them better than anyone ever has. They're not going to go anywhere else. And you've let your bad actors identify themselves too by opting out.
Yep. At the end of the day, insurance is a promise. And if you, as a company, can behave the way that you're describing, you have now shown them that they've paid for a promise and you fulfilled that promise. They paid for the promise, you fulfilled that
Yeah.
promise, and that's valuable, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well, yes.
yeah,
For obvious reasons. Most people don't know when you talk about insurance that the concept is very noble. It's shared risk. Hey, none of us can afford to replace our house on this block, so we're all going to pool together in case anybody has a disaster that the neighborhood will still be fine, right? But that's based on the fact that you're doing the things that you say you're going to do. How can and carriers are always bemoaning the fact, oh, people don't understand what insurance is. They think it's okay just to rob us and and leakage and bad claims. And then we can't sue them because it'll look bad and this and that and all. Well, why don't you just do what you say you're going to do? You're going to have I got the numbers. You're going to have an 8 to 14% lower payout depending on claim category when you do this. Your good actors are going to love you. You're going to be there right in that moment, just like me and you are here right now.
completely.
It's not a call back next week. It's like locks keep honest people honest. Give a good actor a reason to stay a good actor. Let them say, how many times have you heard in your life, no, I don't want to do that to that person. They've been there for me. This is also psychology. They're going to say, no, I don't want to do that to my insurance company because they've always been there for me right at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, completely. And you may only get one or two shots at it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they
So it's
know.
not like, oh, we made a mistake. It's like, no, you made a mistake. You lost the customer. You're
Yes.
not going to get a lot of shots at that. So you should try to nail that every single time. As you're talking, I keep thinking that your product is probably also useful for municipalities.
Yes. We're talking
I
to
bet
the city of
there's
Malibu right now.
yeah, I bet there's a blindness that occurs when these types of things are going on, and they need intelligence as well.
Oh, I called FEMA a million times and I said, every disaster, and not even to get them as a customer, just to do something good, because I said, I've watched these floods and hurricanes and rescue efforts like everybody else has on TV. And I've noticed huge inefficiencies that can only be bad data. Sure, FEMA has drones. Sure, the fire department has drones. But let's think about what happens. The drone pilot's up in the air. He has his area to film. He has to lower the drone. He has to then get back to the command and control center. And then he has to upload that heavy file. And best case scenario, they're making rescue decisions on data that's an hour old in the best case, and sometimes 6 hours old.
Yeah,
It's the same DJI drones. You can look and have a live look for free and actually tell that pilot, no, go over the right, zoom up on that, and make asset, first rescue. But then for carriers to be able, in a catastrophe event, or TPAs, to be able to put the right stuff in the right amount, in the right place on the first time, that helps everybody get back to normal faster. That helps carriers spend less. That helps TPAs do their job faster. They're getting paid on a per claim in cat events, not by the hour, which is another crazy thing in insurance. People got adjusters getting paid by the hour. And they wonder why does they, I've talked to so many of them. Oh, I love those jobs out in Malibu. I get an hour and a half drive out there. I have a lunch for 2 hours. I spend half an hour on the property, and then I have a 2-hour drive back because it's traffic, and I take my time and stay in the right lane to make it 3. So that's a day, 8 hours, and all I did was drive to Malibu and have lunch. And this is so common in the industry. If this is
Yeah.
what you're serving your people with, why are they ever, if your costs and their premiums are based on this kind of behavior, why should they take the shared risk model as what insurance is? They don't take that. They don't understand that because that's not how they're treated.
Yeah, completely. What about not claims? What about outside of claims? Has Dropin been used in like traditional underwriting aspects like inspection?
Yes, underwriting is great. Even for title companies and title policies in the real estate world, they will issue a title policy without doing a site check to make sure that there's no more work going on, so that there's no mechanic lien that can be applied. But they write that title insurance, and I've sold 3 houses in Encino, and I know they didn't come to do that inspection until 10 days later, and risk was already attached. Same thing with underwriting. They bind a policy and they haven't seen the risk yet. They go out, whether it's commercial, under all the carriers, they send somebody out at every commercial policy, right? They're doing it weeks after the fact. Not only that, they have to do inspections on a quarterly basis of any risk that they write. They're all behind. None of them are doing them any more than once a year, but they haven't changed the internal policy. There's no money, there's no time, there's no margin to do any of that. But guess what? Now you don't have to leave your desk. You don't have to travel anymore. You can send a text right to the insured instead of making them fill out a stack of papers like this every year again. It's the same papers. Let me see your property. Okay, let's do a 360. Let's walk it up. Everybody'd rather do that for 10 minutes than fill out this stack of papers again, right?
Yeah, completely.
And it's cheaper, it's faster, it's more efficient. It's the Dropin's idea is the ability to be in 2 places at once.
I like
And
that.
that's our thing, be in 2 places at once. That was what we initially came out with. The ironic thing today is our pivot into insurance brought us back to being able to do what the original idea was. Today, Dropin is capable of putting more cameras, capable of broadcast through the Dropin platform, be they drone or camera phone, in more places, cheaper and faster than every news organization in the world combined by magnitudes of.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so we're super excited. We're super pumped. We're finally, we're getting into process books. People, it's funny because I talk to people, in C-suites and directors of operations and CFOs, and I've learned the internal conflict. Like the VP of claims thinks this is cool, but doesn't want anything to do with this because he doesn't want to start $5 or $150 in the hole processing a claim before his adjuster even touches it. He doesn't care that the average payout is 8 to 14% less because that doesn't do anything for their budget. The CFO will love it, but the CFO in most carriers doesn't have the power to override the VP or director of claims. It requires a C-suite decision to see like, hey, the margins are much better. We need to reconsider how we compensate our claims department. And I told them, hey, this isn't a claims cost. This is an operations cost. This happens at the call center before claims even starts. And they go, oh my God, you're absolutely right. They're like, nope, these are some famous people in the insurance world. Nobody's ever told them like that. Nobody ever looked at them and said, hey, When your good actor is calling for help, you're turning them into a number and hanging up the phone on them. How would you feel?
Yeah.
And they go, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, completely.
Here's your opportunity. And in crisis, they'll help you help them.
Of
People will help
course.
you help them so much more than if you call them back the next day. The crisis is past. There's no more leak. They're irritated now when they think of an insurance company because you weren't there, and now it's going to be paperwork and headaches and a month to get a $500 pipe fixed.
No, you've identified two potential advantages. One is the retention. The good actor raises their hand, and you have the ability to satisfy them, which is
To
the
be a good
promise of the
company.
policy. That's the mission, right? That's what they're supposed to do. And
Yeah.
secondarily, you have increased the potential for fraud elimination because the bad actor can be more easily exposed in that kind of process.
By self-selecting.
Yes, by self-selecting. Yeah.
Better than anything predictive, let people tell you what they are.
I am committing fraud right now.
Anybody who calls, even if they're not a bad person, I'm not casting judgments on their morality or who they are as a person. But anytime that you have someone who's calling about a claim, who doesn't want their claim processed faster or possibly today, and doesn't want to you give them two options. We can send you a text to your smartphone. Oh, it's a legitimate concern for older people, don't want anything to do with that. Okay, we can send a Lyft driver to do it. Anybody who opts out of those two options, whether they're good people or not, are
It's a
bad
signal.
actors for the purposes of insurance.
It's a signal. Completely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you have a
Why?
bridge to use that AI.
It's irrational. That's what it is.
Yes.
Why would someone turn down money now to get it later unless
Or fix now.
there's an ulterior motive. So yeah.
Or start the process now.
Yeah, completely.
Any one of those three things, every claim I've ever done, if the insurance company would come over today, I'd stay home from work. I just had a bathroom leak. I mean, that's how much I would help them if they would have helped me on the same day.
Of course.
And that's the whole concept. Let people, if people are raising their hand, as you said, then raise your hand back and hold it like you promised them you would.
Yeah.
And save yourself 8 to 14% on average claim payout, depending on category, and raise your retention numbers. And what do you think those people are going to do when they tell their friends, oh my God, so-and-so is my insurance company, and guess what? Oh, you're going to have a nightmare. Oh no, they fixed it today. If you get one of those out of 100, I've got to believe that one out of 100 that gets that kind of service where it's actually fixed today, besides other ones whose claims are speeded along, who are happy because they feel like the insurance company's right there, they're going to tell their friends like crazy. That is the best advertising in the world that costs nothing. You actually saved money, improved retention, and got that as a result, an added benefit.
Yeah. I'm going to respect your time. And I always end each podcast with a couple of personal questions. I feel like you've already talked a lot about your personal side, so I appreciate that. But I ask all my guests, what tools or techniques do you use to stay productive and or organized?
I use Jen Friel.
Wow.
She's the best. Actually, I have to say, like, the validation for me is my team. I mean, they pick up, they have tech background that I don't have. There's some people who have insurance background that I don't have, and they stick with me. A couple of years ago, we lost a contract that would have put us in the black 2 years ago. The director of claims loved it, actually. The board said, no, we're not doing business with this guy because we have tier 1 carriers, and if they hear we're doing with a convict, then we might lose our business. And the guy actually got on the phone and cried. He's like, Louis, I'm so sorry. You've been 100% honest. You've delivered on everything. I thought it was no problem. I had tentative approval from the board. It was no problem. And the CEO just came and told me that we can't do it. And I just want you to know that you have the best stuff at the best price.
Mm.
And, my team stuck with me. They're all getting less than half of what they would get on the open market. They're all hyper skilled. But you know what? They believe they have a very generous equity incentive package because I take care of the people who take care of me. Again, something I learned in my old life that applies to this life. Richard Branson said something. Your employees are more important than your customers. And the reason why is if you take care of your employees and your team, they will take care of your customers. If you try to take care of your customers, usually it's at the expense of your employees, and that never works long term.
Yeah, completely. I like that. So unless Jen has written a book, I don't think that's going to be the answer to this question. Have there been any books that you have found to be influential in it could be business and or personal, fiction, nonfiction, anything sort of stick out as, wow, this one book really shaped something or was influential in what I do, who I am?
The book that I think had the greatest effect on me, and it's not because of its subject matter, it was called The Grand Design. And I love it. It's Stephen Hawking, Leonid Mlodinow, two physicists. They talked about complex physics problems and ideas in the Einstein way. You can explain it to a 6-year-old, then you understand it yourself, right? And I've always tried to relate to that at a ground level. Some people say it makes me too blunt or too rough or too whatever, but I feel direct communication is the best way to make sure that you're understood and expectations are managed and not to waste time. But it showed me how to look at things with different perspectives. And the example that I'll use is they talked about a goldfish in a goldfish bowl. And you imagine that there's a blackboard in front of this goldfish bowl, and the goldfish is a math fish, and it makes its physics, and it's Newton, and it's Einstein, and it's Planck, and it's Bohr all rolled into one, and he figures out all this physics and geometry and everything. And then the goldfish has a child, and he tells his child, people lie to you, this, that, but math will never lie to you. Well, guess what? One day the fish gets taken out of the fish bowl for the bowl to be cleaned. And guess what? The math doesn't work anymore because everything was built with the curvature of the fishbowl.
Yep.
We're so sure that we're at the center of the world or the center of the universe, or that, we subscribe to these dogmas that make us feel more than we are. But I believe consciousness in that way, and this book, it doesn't say anything like this in there, but this book gave me this idea that consciousness is not enlightenment in most ways. It's actually a blinder because it doesn't allow us to consider things that don't meet our eye test. There's things that are happening all over the world that are different for different people from a different perspective. Our consciousness makes it very difficult to examine things in a way without some dogmatic baseline data that we picked up somewhere. We're inbred with religion. We're inbred with what our parents teach us. In school, we don't teach thought. We teach memorization, and not in a very good way either. There's much better ways to teach memory than what we do in schools. And to me, that's the greatest gift that we have is the ability to receive new information, like the goldfish who gets out of the bowl, and wow, I just learned something. Not be mad that you were wrong. There's an excitement in being wrong because it means you learned something. We don't teach that. We don't learn that. But that book, I know it sounds crazy, but when I came away from that book, those were the concepts that came to light in my mind. It was like, okay, 2 + 2 = 4, but there might be a place where it doesn't. Maybe consciousness is our fishbowl because, we're here for the biological imperative, which is to host DNA and breed our own replacement on a very base scientific level, right? And maybe consciousness and why we're so susceptible to dogmas and not receiving new information is because we're only here for that purpose. And the people that are scratching at that and not accepting that, are the ones that are the most self-aware, and the most self-aware people in the world are the ones that get excited when they're wrong, because it means they learned something.
I can't think of a better way to end the podcast. I will have that on the show notes. This is not what I was expecting, and went completely existential on this.
Yeah.
I love that. That makes for a very good podcast. So, Louis, thanks so much for taking time out of your Saturday to share your story, share the drop-in story, and to share a little philosophy.
Yeah, well, I hope I didn't take you too much off course, but insurance can be boring sometimes, and you're a
Yeah,
lot of
of
fun to
course.
talk to. So
No, of course,
I
no.
enjoyed it
If
immensely.
we're gonna go off on a tangent, this is the way to go off. So, thank you so much. My guest this week has been Louis Ziskin of Dropin. Louis, thanks again.
Thank you, Nicholas.